Hi everyone, my name is Simone Rurik and today we're doing occupied bed. Guys, remember, there are 5 things that they look for, which is infection control, safety, privacy, indirect and direct control or contact. Guys, the reason why I am reiterating and in every video I keep saying the same thing over and over is just being repetitive of reminding you that is what they're looking for. That's not the only things that they do look for, but those are the 5 major things. Guys, I would like you to go online and to really watch the videos, listen to the explanations, and try to follow it. And a lot of persons keep asking me if they need to go to classes and such. Yes, you must put in the hours. It is a requirement. But also, you have to actually touch the skills, to practice it, to do it in front of your teacher, in front of your the person who is doing the lectures and such, so that they can guide you. You know, seeing it, watching it is totally different from doing it. When you're sitting there, you think, oh, I can do it. But it's not so until you actually go to the bed and begin doing it. You will find out that you will forget a lot of stuff. So make sure that you're in classes, guys. Another thing, guys, is that, as I said, I am teaching you the skills, which is from the requirements or for the New York State Board, right? But keep in mind that when you're in the exam, the examiner is who you listen to, and her instruction is what you follow. Okay? So, with that being said, I'm going to be doing the skill, occupied bed, and I'm also going to be explaining. During the explanation, guys, for this skill, I'll be doing using 4 sets of gloves. I'm just reiterating why we don't mix dirty with clean. That is why I'm going to be using the gloves. A lot of times when you go into the exam, the examiner says, use 1 pair of gloves. If she says use 1, that's what is required, all right? But I'm going to show you why I'm using 4 pairs of gloves, and why, I change the gloves, and why I do it, all right? So you just pay attention, and of course, go to your classes, and be encouraged that I'm putting out a lot of information so that you reach your achievements, that you can attain your achievements. All right, guys? So let's go. Let's attack this skill. So I'm going to begin. Good morning, Mrs. Jones. My name is Simone Rick, and this morning I'll be your nursing assistant. Mrs. Jones, I'll be assisting you with occupied bed. Is that okay with you, Mrs. Jones? Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'll go wash my hands and I'll be right back. As usual, notice that I introduced myself. I told her who I am. I told her what I'll be doing, and I asked her permission if it's okay to do this skill on her. She says okay, so now I'm going to wash my hands and come back to her. But before I go washing my hands, I will give her privacy. So I pull the curtain for privacy, and I come back here to wash my hands. I wash my hands. Now, I'm going to come to Mrs. Jones. I'm going to make sure that the person I'm giving the service to is Mrs. Jones, and also to make sure that she's alert. Mrs. Jones, may I see your ID bracelet, please? What is your name? What is your date of birth? Thank you, Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones answered, and she said that she's Mrs. Jones, so she's a person I'm giving service to, and she did understand that I asked her questions, so she's alert, okay? So, as I said before in all the videos before, if the resident is not alert, that means if she is confused, you have to report it to the nurse, okay? If she's alert, that's okay. You continue with your skills. So, thank you, Mrs. Jones. I'll go get my supplies and I will be back. So, for my supplies for this skill, I know I don't need to open the drawer or anything. So, I'm going to begin by taking what I need here. So, for this skill, I know I need my privacy blanket, where I place it right here on my hand, away from my clothes. I know I need my fitted sheet, and I know I need my top cover, which this is my flat sheet. Okay, a lot of persons call this sheet this sheet, because I know a lot of persons get this sheet. This is my fitted sheet, right? Or they call it their bottom sheet or what. That is it, right? So I'm going to be placing it first right here. Now, this is the top cover. What do we call this? The top cover, all right? Making it clear. And then I know I need my pillowcase, and I have it right here. That's what I need, all right? Now, when I get here, I know I need a chalk for the table, and I'm going to be taking my 4 pairs of gloves. When I come here, as usual, before placing anything on the table, I will cover it with a chalk. You notice I place the chalk on the table and then I open it. I put down my gloves and then I turn over my sheets. So the reason why I took them in this order, first I took my privacy blanket, then I took my fitted, my top covers, and then the pillowcase, because that is the order I'll be using them in, okay? So the next thing I'll be doing is putting on a pair of gloves. This is the first glove that I'm putting on. Guys, I keep telling you guys that the reason, one of the things that I keep in mind is to keep my call bell under the pillow. Reason being is that I really want to know where my call bell is at all times, all right? So I place it under the pillow. Try to practice that. Now that I have on my gloves, I'll be winding the bed up. But remember, you don't want to surprise Mrs. Jones, so we're going to tell her, inform her of what we're doing, okay? Mrs. Jones, I'll be winding your bed up. Come here. As I said before, every time we wind the bed up, we must use good body mechanics. I'm going to stoop with my back straight, or I could be kneeling on one knee. But I'll stoop like this and I'll wind the bed up. After winding the bed up, I make sure the bed is locked. Lock, lock. Now I'll be putting on the top covers. Mrs. Jones, I'll be putting your I will be putting your privacy blanket on and taking down your top covers. Before I do that, I make sure the mitre is out because I'm going to take off the entire covers. Notice that I'm working from side to side, never at the foot of the bed. I only go there when I'm winding up the bed or winding it down. So I take out the mitre, and of course, I'm going to put on the privacy blanket that I told Mrs. Jones I was putting on. When I'm putting on the privacy blanket, I make sure I open the blanket on the bed over Mrs. Jones like this. Remember, I told Mrs. Jones I'll be taking her top covers down. Mrs. Jones, could you hold the top of the privacy blanket, please? Very good. Because Mrs. Jones, we're trying to get Mrs. Jones involved. We want her to have as much mobility as possible, and you know, to help in her daily care. Very good, Mrs. Jones. Thank you. So I took down the top covers and I pushed it over to the side. Now I'm going to take it away. Remember, we don't need the top covers because we're changing the sheets. All right? So I push it over to this side and I'm going to roll it away like this and place it in the angle. Side to side, guys, remember? Now, the first thing I'm going to do is to take off the flat sheet. So I have to make sure Mrs. Jones is not lying on the sheet. So I have to turn her, okay? So this is what is going to happen. Mrs. Jones, let's cross your arms and legs. Very good. Cross your arms and cross your legs. Notice, Mrs. Jones, I don't want to turn Mrs. Jones, and Mrs. Jones is at the edge of the bed. All right? I don't want her to fall out of the bed. So I'll just do this Mrs. Jones, on the count of 3, I'll be pulling you over to me. Remember, when you put somebody over to you, you are pulling them in tiers. Shoulder to hip, hip to and shoulder and hip, hip and knees, knees and ankles. So I'm going to pull her towards me so that when I turn her, she does not fall out of the bed. Okay? Mrs. Jones, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Shoulder and hips, hips and knees, knees and ankle. Mrs. Jones, I'll be turning you to that side. When I turn you, Mrs. Jones, please hold on the rail for your safety. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Turn Mrs. Jones. Notice my hand is under the covers. When I turn her, it falls like this, so she's not being exposed. So I'm going to take her. She's holding on, so I'm going to take the flash. Now I can remove my cover from under the pillows. And I'm going to start rolling away the fitted sheet. So roll, roll. When I roll it, I tuck it under her. Roll, roll, take it off. And I tuck it under her feet. See me, let me show you what is happening now. I roll it away and I'm tucking it. So this side of the bed is empty. Now, I just touched the sheet, the fitted sheet that she was lying on. Okay? So what I'll do now is to pinch this glove. She's holding on for safety. And I'm watching. So I'm removing this glove now. Because I just touched the dirtiest linen that she was laying on. And that would be the very one that was touching the sheet. I wash my hands. My hands are clean. So I'm going to be putting on a clean glove. That is the first glove that I changed. Okay? I put on this one. And now I'm going to be touching the clean fitted. So I've laid it on the bed as I said before. And I'm going to begin putting it on. Guys, a lot of times you try to put on this sheet and it falls like, when you hold it like this, it falls down. So for me, I know that can happen. I just put it here so that it doesn't happen. Alright? So I'm going to be, this sheet is new. So I'm going to try to get it onto this side because this sheet has never been used. It's my first time using it. So I'm going to have a little problem now. But don't worry, we're going to be putting it on. So we put it on at the top and then we bring it down to the bottom. Hoping that it fits properly. But this is how it is when you put it on. Now for this part, we're going to roll it towards us, the excess. And when we roll it towards us, this is what we do next. Because it's rolled like this, we're going to tuck it under this one here. Alright guys? Tuck it under. Tuck it under. Tucking it under. This is how it looks because you tuck it under. Remember, we don't want to expose Mrs. Jones, but because I'm teaching it, I'm showing you what is happening, okay? So, if we don't want to expose it, this is how we would be working. By tucking it under. Okay, Mrs. Jones, on the count of 3, I'll be putting you back to lay on your back. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Mrs. Jones, uncross that arm, uncross this leg. Very good, Mrs. Jones. Now I'm going to go to the next direction. Now, I want Mrs. Jones to be turned the other direction. I'm going to pull her towards me. Mrs. Jones, on the count of 3, I'll be pulling you towards me. Notice, before you pull anyone, you must cross the arms and legs. You don't want the limbs to be plain or all over the place, and then we cause an accident, okay? So Mrs. Jones, let's cross your arms and legs. Now that I'm turning her to the right, I'm going to put her left foot over to her left foot over to the right. And on the count of 3, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to be pulling you towards me. 1, 2, 3, hip and shoulder and hip and knees and ankle. Remember, Mrs. Jones is helpful, so she's going to be helping me. So Mrs. Jones, on the count of 3, let's turn you. 1, 2, 3. Mrs. Jones, kindly hold to the rail for your safety. And then I continue by pulling down, continue pulling off the dirty fitted sheet. Okay, guys? So I'm pulling it and rolling it down like this. Remember, Mrs. Jones is holding on for safety. Now I have the dirty one off. So I just touched this one, right? So now I'll be pulling, pinch pull, roll over, and I'm throwing it away. Wash my hands are clean, and I put on my 3rd set of gloves. Okay, Mrs. Jones, let's continue. I'll be pulling out the other part of the sheet that I had rolled up. This is how simple it is. I pull it over to this side now. Roll it out, roll it out. Roll, 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 roll. And I'm going to be putting it on the bed. Fix, tuck it under, and this is how it looks. Mrs. Jones, on the count of 3, I'll be putting you back on your back. 1, 2, 3, shoulder and hip, turn you over, uncross the arms, uncross the legs. Okay, guys, now we have changed the fitted sheet. This is Mrs. Jones on the new sheet. See how easy that was? Now, I have to put on the top covers now. And of course, I'm going to take away the privacy blanket. So I'm going to continue. Okay, Mrs. Jones, let's put on your top covers and take away the privacy blanket. So, Mrs. Jones, could you hold the top of your sheet for me, please? Very good. I'm going to be pulling down your privacy blanket. Very good. So I pull it down, and of course I tuck it to that side. We're going to walk around to this side, and I'm going to roll it away from myself and Mrs. Jones. Make sure it is rolled up properly. Roll, 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 and it is rolled up. And we place it in the armhole. The next thing we'll do is to continue making the covers. Remember, we have to make the miter. If I want the sheet to come over to this way, I never pull it on her. I lift, up, pull, and then I just drop it. Okay, guys? The mic over this side, and we're good. And of course, now I'm going to give Mrs. Jones some toe space. Mrs. Jones, let's give you some toe space. Notice when I'm giving toe space, I pull the covers down like this. Okay, so I'm finished with the bed. The next thing I'll be doing is to change the pillowcase. So when I'm changing the pillowcase, guys, you have to be careful with Mrs. Jones' head. So we have to tell her about her head now. Mrs. Jones, I'll be raising your head to take away the pillow, okay? So I raise Mrs. Jones' head. 1, 2, 3. Put it back down. Very good, Mrs. Jones. And now I have the pillow in my hand. Guys, the pillow case is very dirty. Remember, Mrs. Jones slept on it, and she has chemicals in her hair and all of that, so it is really dirty. So we don't put the, you know, like when we're at home, when we put it on our pillowcase, what we do, sometimes we place it under our necks and we put it down, or sometimes we're flashing. We never do that in the exam. So I'm going to hold the pillowcase, the pillow itself, and I'm going to take away the pillowcase by rolling it down, okay? After doing that, I'll be putting down the pillow at the front of the bed, and I'm going to put this in the hamper, okay? Or I don't really have to do that. Like move to the hamper, I'll just place it on the table, placing the clean from the dirty, all right? So the next thing, so I just took off the dirty pillowcase, so I'm going to change this gloves. So I'm going to pinch the gloves again. Okay, instead of just putting this down, let me just, because it's dirty already and I have on the gloves, I'm just going to put it in the hamper, okay? But I could also leave it on the table until I'm finished. I put it away. I'm going to pinch the glove here, take it off, and I'm going to roll it over, throw it in here. I wash my hands. My hands are clean, and this is for my final gloves, all right? Guys, when you're taking off the glove, remember to take it off in the bathroom. It's because I'm teaching it to you. I want you to see what I'm doing, all right? So the next thing I do is to put on my clean gloves. Remember, my hands are washed and clean. So I put on the last pair of gloves because I'm going to touch the clean pillowcase now, all right? So I have on this pillowcase, this gloves. Ta-da! So the next thing is to open your pillowcase. Now, as usual, we never open anything like that in the air. We put the pillowcase on the bed like this. We open it, and this is the pillowcase, all right? So, anywhere the tag is, it goes inside the pillowcase. The mouth of the pillowcase is never to the door, all right? It's always to the wall. Keep that in mind. So when I'm going to put on the pillowcase, this is how I'm going to be putting it on. Some persons have a better way. This is my way. I put my hand here, and I hold the middle of the bottom of the pillowcase like this. This is the pillow. I hold it like this, and here is going to go to the bottom. So this has the tag here. I just hold the middle of the pillow like this, and then I just bring it over the pillow. Okay? Some people will fold the pillow in two. I can do it this way, like this, then put it down and continue putting it in, tucking it in, all right? And this is me putting on the pillowcase, all right, guys? Notice the edges here are not in like this. It should be out, okay? And notice this is the opening of the pillow, and I'm going to be putting the pillow back on Mrs. Jones' head, but the opening will be to the wall, not to the door, okay? Mrs. Jones, I'll be putting your pillow back on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Lift your head. Okay, very good, Mrs. Jones. You did well. Very good, Mrs. Jones. So notice I'm finished with that. When I'm finished changing the sheet, the next thing that I need to do is to do what? Lower the bed. Mrs. Jones, I'll be lowering your bed. I'll come back here. Good body mechanics. And I'm winding the bed down. Wind it down. Make sure it's locked, lock, lock. And of course, the next thing I'll be doing is to throw away my garbage. Dispose away of my garbage. And this is all I have to dispose of. So I'm going to roll it away from myself and Mrs. Jones. Dispose of it. The next thing I'll make sure is that Mrs. Jones can call me when she needs me. Mrs. Jones, here's your call bell. Feel free to call me if you need anything. Undo the privacy. Come here. Take off my gloves. Pinch the mitt. Roll it over. Wash my hands. Come back. Look around, everything is fine. My skill is finished. Notice, guys, this skill, I did use 4 pairs of gloves. It is okay if I use 4 pair of gloves, and it's also okay if the examiner says just use a pair. Okay, guys? Guys, I hope my skills that I upload to the to YouTube is helpful and informative. Guys, feel free to leave comments and feel free to ask me questions on things that you don't understand. We are in a learning process, and if I'm incorrect doing sharing my skills that I learned, guys, ask me, or we can have a conversation to say why this is done or why it should be done or whatever. But this is a learning process for all of us, and I hope my skills are informative. Please remember that you need to be in classes for this. Reason being that the state requires you to give a certain amount of hours in the class. All right? And you must try to actually do the skills in front of your instructor. All right? So that she can say, okay, you have this down. Okay, this is where you need improvement or whatever. So guys, thank you for watching my video. I hope you like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share. Whoop whoop, another video was made.